part of the audience here, me included. This is for Representative Amador. Is there any possibility of tax relief legislation for citizens over to 70, and I'll say over 65 years, that because school levies are too high?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I don't know why it was necessarily directed at me, but I don't know. I don't know if that's going to come at the individuals that are maybe on revenue and taxation would be a better question mark for that. But I have not heard of anything in particular, but that doesn't mean that it's not out there. One thing when we talked about RS legislation routing slips, it's not public information, so until it's introduced in a committee, we don't, even fellow legislators don't know that information. So certainly that's a topic of discussion that's certainly important. I know people that live on fixed incomes, that's certainly a concern, but I don't know of that legislation. I don't personally have it, so.
I am in rev and tax, and that specific issue hasn't come up. Well, what has come up is I've received 2 constituent letters about just being priced out of their homes, taxed out of their homes. And that is the circuit breaker program, which there are calculations, and then when it's a judge based on income, when it's a judge that someone qualifies for that, then that request is sent to the state verifies it, and then the state essentially cuts a check from the general fund to offset the loss to the county for a circuit breaker. So there is some conversation amongst members in rev and tax that is not even close to an RES yet. And what Paul said, an RS is private property. An RS is the property of the legislator who proposes it, and they can choose to make it public. They can choose to keep it their own. It does not become public, like Paul said, until it goes to presented to a committee. So some of the questions that I've been getting on my email, and thank you for all the questions, I haven't even seen the RS because it hasn't been showed to me, so you really can't respond. So if somebody says, well, we don't know what's in it, it's not because they're not aware or not working hard, it's because those are private property until it becomes public property. But there is concern in the tax committee that people are being taxed out of their homes, especially or senior citizens over 65, that are on fixed income. And how do you tackle that? And we live in a beautiful area that people want to move to. Our home values go up. Personally, I don't believe because somebody builds a McMansion next to someone else that someone else's property taxes should go up. That's our system. That's the way it works. So there's look at that and maybe increasing the homeowner's exemption perhaps, looking at the circuit breaker statute, and they're balancing that because everything costs money with what is being planned for the budget. So those are some things that I think more so the circuit breaker than anything else right now in our community.
John.
Okay, this is one of the distressing things that I've discovered about the legislature, is that it seems that with a large percentage, I won't say all, because there's certainly a lot of us that are against this mindset. If the first question is, how much is it going to hurt the budget? In other words, how much less revenue will this change that you want to make the law bring in? And if it's too much, they're not going to go with it no matter how important it is. And here's the example. Right now, in Idaho code, there's a provision that if you're a veteran who has 100% combat-related disability, you get a pretty good tax credit, property tax credit. But if you're a veteran who's 80% disabled, but you are 100% unemployable, which means you can't support your family, you're not eligible for that credit. So when I started investigating why we have that arbitrary number, I was told, well, the fiscal impact of the 100% would be $1 million. The fiscal impact of the 80% actually was down as far as 70, was $10 million, and that's just a decision that some legislators that were able to control that legislation were not going to permit. And so that's very distressing to me. You know, we're at a critical time, not just in our state, but nationally. And if we don't start looking at comprehensive tax reform, the way we collect money, the way our citizens are taxed now, and if we don't start planning for 2, 5, 10 years down the road, we are going to be in serious trouble. From the budget discussions that we've had, we know now that the minimum maintenance budget increase every year. That means those things that are going to be added to have to be added to the budget by growth like inflation, whatever Medicaid is gonna cost us, which we still don't know, will add a minimum of 5.7% to the budget. That is unsustainable. How many want to have their taxes increase 5.7% a year in the state? And so that's why we have to start planning. So my biggest frustration to date is this notion that instead of cutting our expenses to fulfill the proper role of government, all we care about is the bottom line and to keep that money coming in. And we've got to change that. We can't do that without your help. If you're concerned about your increase in taxes, you need to really have some interaction with us so that we know what you're thinking, because we've got to change or we're doomed.
Anybody else on the board choose to address that? All right, John?